Right. So it looks like everyone's had a bit of a chance to come in now. So I wanted to introduce you guys to this wonderful friend of mine and colleague, Karen Mary. And I wanted you to tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm very honored to have you today. And we've known each other for quite a while now. And something that that you don't think that I remember about you, that I do. And I want to see if I'm accurate. But I actually didn't meet you when I met you. We actually met on Messenger first.
We met on
Remember? Mm-hmm. And you maybe had just moved to your country. Yeah.
Wow.
And you reached out to me and you said you were following my work, and you made it clear to me that you were along the same path of things. And you were very, like, typically when I get like an instant message from someone, I'm like, oh, great. Here it comes. What am I going to say? What do they want? Because I get like a bunch of those. And and you were so kind.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad. Thank you.
Right. But I was on the skittish side at that time. So we didn't end up being friends because I was on the skittish side. and then we ended up meeting later. And I joined your group, which is phenomenal, by the way. Feel free to tell us about Awakened Spiritual Lightworkers, which is Karen's fabulous Facebook group full of mystics, initiates, and adepts of all kinds and all different beliefs and background systems. But yeah, that's how we met. Do you remember?
I don't remember it sounds exactly like something I would do.
Yeah. And you showed me a picture. You were on water.
Well, we moved from Bermuda before we were here.
That was it. You were on a boat. Oh. Do you remember now? This is so fun.
My boat, which was, that's the one thing, you're not supposed to be attached to things and you let things go. But my boat was, yes. My uncle, when he passed, left us money. And I said, I'm going to buy a boat when I get to Bermuda and I'm going to name it after you. So that was the hardest thing, to let that boat go. And like, when I finally had to sell it because we had to move here, I cried. I was like, this is an object. I shouldn't be crying, but I was so attached to the boat.
Was it the boat or the sea that was calling you, though?
Well, if you were in Bermuda, it was such a small island. It's like 15 miles long or something. So like a 15 by 2 or something. You had to have a boat to get away. So it was both. You had to be called to the sea, but in order to do that, you had to get onto the boat and separate yourself from the island and the stresses of living in a tiny place with people, and just go out there, drop anchor, and just sit. Mm-hmm. And also, I felt he really kept us safe too, because, that boat was not a lake, that was the ocean. And there were times where it was pretty hairy. We didn't know what we were doing. And I would call him my uncle. And let me tell you what, he never failed me. I mean, one time I nearly got smashed between the boat and the dock. And I was straddled, arms, feet. I would, Uncle Jerry, please help me. Please help me. Next thing you know, the wind blows. Whoosh, and the boat comes right up to the dock and I rolled on. I'm like, never failed me. So the boat was a hard one. Anyway, that's not what you wanted to know about me, I'm sure.
No, it was. It's interesting. And you had on a blue and white striped shirt, and you had on a hat, but I could see your black hair, and you had on glasses.
Well, you want to know one of the first things I remember about you is that you, and I just never felt this, I never actually thought about this before, but you said to me, well, the first time we actually had a meet face to face, is that you recognized me on a soul level. And I just went, what does that even mean? And then I was like, I really, really knew, because at all this, because I kind of semi-retired in Bermuda, but when we got here, I really, really retired, which is what allowed me then to really focus on developing. When I hear everybody can be a psychic, oh, really? Oh, yes, I really want to do that. That was like a calling, really, really strong. So how am I going to do that? And, who am I going to learn from, and all this? And although I was learning from other teachers, this and this, and I was doing this searching thing all over Facebook and listening to this one and this one, and it wasn't until I just landed on you and I went, this is it. This is it. Because I have had the most wonderful teachers get me to a certain point, but then you had to push me to get to certainly where I am now. I mean, the changes that have gone through were because of the work that you and I have done together, and what you've helped me with. So I created I felt what was missing on Facebook was a group that like-minded people like me could go and practice in a safe space, where if they were interested in healing and Reiki and doing mediumship and doing card reading and doing whatever it was, that this group isn't limited to just this or just that. And it's not going to be for memes, but my group know how I am about memes. It's like, yeah, I don't mind one occasionally, but you do not fill up my group with memes. This is for support and love of each other. And we will, people say, can I advertise this or that? I'm like, are you kidding me? You have grown so much. And now you're going to go out and do like this for me, my first Facebook Live. I was so excited to tell everybody to do my, YouTube Live, but I was going to actually do this. I'm putting myself out there. And that's what I want to see in my group. I want to see them grow and flourish and advertise what you're doing. Tell people what you're doing, and then we will all support you and go, yeah. Compassionate, right?
Well, tell us how do you consider yourself in a modern world of mysticism? It's so different from what you and I learned and studied together. It's so different from the books that you and I both delve so heavily into, and in the practices of Kabbalion and Kabbalah in particular. The world is just in a different era, and they still need that ancient sacred tongue, the ancient sacred words of the philosophers and mystics of, our elders, our ancestors. And you and I really thrive upon teaching that in a modern world. So tell me how do you consider yourself as a mystic with that? How are you enjoying teaching Kabbalah now? And
tell you what, you said this to me again. It says sometimes you just need to have that reading, because it puts you on that. You need the touch of the tiller on the boat to just an inch over there, and there you go. Now you take it from here. And you had said to me, you always come in times of government oppression. So for me, well, I'm sitting here and I'm feeling that I'm quite removed from a lot of stuff going on, because for those of you who don't know me, I live in Italy now, that I'm here for a reason, and I have to embrace that reason, and I have to do whatever I can do being here, helping now, because if I come in those times, well, we couldn't have more government oppression, I think, than we've ever had. It is really out there. So what can I do? Well, helping people one-on-one, I love to do that, but actually it's going out, being kind to people, being compassionate to people. I have reactions, and people will say this to me, the way that people react to you here, even though you don't speak the language, because I go out with my compassion hat on, and I know that there is so much suffering going on. We feel it as empaths. We feel it. We know that there is just so much hardship going on. Nobody is untouched from what's happened over the last few years, starting with even before COVID, but with the COVID, the things that were going on, the governments that would come and say, okay, you're going to be locked up in your house. You're not allowed to leave. If you get in your car and you are not going to the store or to the hospital, you're going to get pulled over and fined. That kind of thing, where you're just feeling like, wow, this is, are we back in the Holocaust here? Are we going to get pulled out? And I mean, it was the fear you could feel. So I had to put that away as a mystic and go, I was never afraid of getting it. And the fear is gone. I'm going to go out there and make the best of what I can. I'm going to smile to people. I'm going to listen to people. I'm going to encourage them to tell me their story. And that's the best thing I can do, because first of all, the language is a little bit of I can't exactly open my Kabbalah book and read them passages, or my course of love and say, but Jesus says this, but that for me, I have to do it in the way that I can. And one of my favorite ways is by teaching the other people that are in my group, and they're all teaching me too. It's not a one-way street. Mm-hmm. That how they can be compassionate, how they can be better at what they're doing. And it's the trickle. This one helps, this one helps, this one helps, this one. And then people will come back to me saying, you know what you said about this or that? I was able to really help somebody with that comment and or that insight. So for me, I start out with my day. How can I serve today with what I've got? Right. Mm-hmm. And God never, ever, ever lets me down. If I have a day that I know I have time, please show me, put in front of me today someone that I can help. And that's my compassion.
Mm-hmm. I love that prayer. That's one of the things that when a lot of initiates come through my mystery school programs, one of the questions on the entrance questionnaire is, are you afraid of the word God? And recently I thought to change it, are you afraid of the word prayer? Because almost everybody said no. Like it was unanimous. Most people that come to me would say in some form, you know, if I'm allowed to broaden that word and not make it religious, right? And that's compassionate for me. But when I say prayer, suddenly people were very catalyzed, very afraid, angry. I got resentful responses. I can't follow your work anymore. You wouldn't believe the YouTubes in particular. You guys here watching me today are not so much in our small crowd here that are watching, but just YouTube in general that comes back and saw it later. We're like, why are you praying? What kind of religious stuff are you teaching now? And it was interesting because prayer to me is a lifeline to a cosmic consciousness. It's beyond a human deity. You know, we tend to think that there's some old man with, you know, bearded sitting up on a throne somewhere, made in the image. Therefore, if we're made in the image, then, and by the way, every single species is, and we have all different kind of images. So what does that tell you about that great machine in the cosmos? So then, oh, well, God must also have a law. We have laws, and we probably get it from God, right? We start thinking we have a certain order, and we probably get that from God. I found that to be very ultimately confusing when I was taught a lot of the great mystical texts, including the Bible, when I was taught that, you know, as a child by fundamental Baptist Sunday school teachers, that there is a wrathful God, that there's an angry God, that we're going to hell. Those certain tenets of, you know, God deity that would be man-made, right? Or at least contrived in a concept. I found that to be very different, like that type of prayer, that supplication, that praying for your needs when you're afraid, praying for someone else because you want them to be how you want them to be, and you want them to do what you want them to do. Praying for the world from an afraid mind, praying for certain political leaders to be disbanded or taken down, or what was when Trump was in office, everyone was praying to get him, what's the word? I'm so
Fascinated.
yeah, whatever they do. Right. And I thought, wow, politics is not my energy and not my business energetically at all. It's such a massive gaping wound in society that represents our deepest fears. So I can pray for something that's beyond what I know because I don't know jack about it. My filters will lead me astray. I do not have that grace of understanding. So I would pray for the grace of understanding about politics when certain things would frighten me, right? And I found prayer was the most compassionate lifeline. It was a lifeline to a cosmic consciousness that could open us up to becoming compassionate, not simply towards others, but mainly towards ourselves. It really has to start there, mystics. If you're not feeling compassionate towards yourself, you'll be fairly grumpy towards others. So I found that interesting, that people were so afraid of the word prayer in a modern world, when mystics for thousands of years have used that as a communication line to their own soul. I found that really interesting. All sorts of mystics, whether they be Christian mystics or Sufi masters. And no matter how you pray and what you call it, and whether it be wordful or wordless. I've seen beautiful poetic prayers. I've seen complete quiet contemplations. This reminds me a little bit of a couple of days ago, we channeled Little Flower is what she goes by. Her saint name is Therese of Lisieux. And she was sharing this story with us. I don't know if you remember this story, where she was in her monastery and she was praying, and they were meant to be in contemplative prayer, just very quiet, not speaking aloud, all the nuns. And she said there was this nun like to her side that was just always nervous and like moving on her rosaries and constantly tapping on something and moving about, she called it. And she said it drove her nuts, and it really made her mind very unsettled, and she was finding it hard to be compassionate. And she started breaking into a sweat that by the time she would go into the evening contemplative prayers with these nuns, she would just be in a nervous sweat by the end of it. And one day, she was sitting there and she said, God, I just don't know how to pray right now. And she felt it loud and clear in this mystical experience that just overcame her in this real basic, simple irritation. She said, God said to her, clear as day, without words, but just in a download of boom, there it is. You know how it comes.
Yep.
God said to her, let the fidgeting be a divine music. And she started looking at it in a new frame, like the moving of the hands on the rosary and the whole fidgeting of the tapping on the knee and all the rocking back and forth and all the things this other nun was doing. And it made me think about our chaotic world, how hard it is to be compassionate in a world that is non-stop, and everyone seems very restless and very fidgety and very anxious and very agitated and unable to be still. And God said to her, let their pain be your music, let their frustration be your music.
Yeah, that's
and it was just one of the most compassionate things that she, and she gave us another example of how she was washing dishes, and there was this nun that was really messy and splashing dirty dishwater all over her. And she said to us when she was sharing this story, she said, I thought to myself, perhaps I should stand back from the wash basin to just give a verbal cue, a nonverbal cue to the other nun that I don't want the dishwater on me. And and then God said, no, let it be a divine shower. And it was a hot day and she got soaked. And
transmute. It's clean.
That one was a little bit easier for me to understand how to be compassionate towards another in that situation, especially if it's 103 right now. So I could personalize that a little bit more. But are people going around in our world splashing their thoughts and splashing their influence energetically, their intellectual and energy influence on us? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I really believe compassion can be learned. If you don't feel like you're a compassionate person or you want to be more compassionate, you can do that. I really, if you start it, like you say in the morning, it's one of the first things when you said, how about we speak about compassion? It's like compassion starts at home. Compassion starts with you. And you have to, in the morning, if you can do your meditation then, if you can just breathe, do your mindful breathing before you go out of the house and interact with other people, release your own fears, release your own angers, release your own insecurities about whatever's going on that day before you go out and project that onto somebody else. Because there are, as we know, lots of empaths out there that don't necessarily realize they're empaths, but they're going to feel that for as soon as you walk in there to some store and somebody cuts you in line or whatever it is, or you're driving and somebody cuts you off. Try to get rid of that first, then put on your compassion. I'm going to try to be compassionate today as much as possible, because everybody's suffering. There's nobody who's not affected right now. And we can't possibly know what's going on with everybody. I had such an unusual experience just going to a shop, checking out. I was just chatting to, it was a young lady, and I was just about to take my bags, and she said, thank you. I said, what? She said, thank you for being so kind and so nice. And I'm like, what? I didn't do anything. I had no idea what was going on with her. And I even kept thinking about it all the way to the car. She must have people that are just mean to her all day long. She must have people who, or maybe it was because the foreigners had frustrated with the language, maybe that she kept saying, but you've been so nice. You've been so nice. But I just thought that was such a strange thing, but it's a really easy thing. if you start with your thoughts, and if the thought starts at the first thing to go wrong, stop the thought, because it's the three, the thoughts, the voice, and the action. And that to me is how you learn compassion. Start up here.
Right.
And stop those fearful.
Train the thoughts. Yeah. Train your thoughts. That is something about, you mentioned empathy, and how I find that to be, when most people call that empathy, I just call it an untrained nervous system, because people, particularly in a modern spiritual society, are looking at empathy as a weakness. I'd like for you to look at empathy as a superpower. Because in a well-trained nervous system, it begins in your thoughts. It begins with training your thoughts, and your mind will train the body. It will tell the body what to do. But the breath is a simple force of life. It's may the force be with you. That's what we go for here. That is that, prana, that force. And when people are walking around holding their breath and breathing really fast and panicking, if we learn these simple steps to train our breath, our thoughts kind of, I'm not going to say they're not problematic, but they slow down, and then they eventually pause. Even if you're deer in the headlights, even if you produce a neurological, psychological freeze response, you still have a moment to gather yourself. A short one, but it's a start.
Yes.
So pause. Yeah. So I find that most people who come to me who suffer from panic disorders, that's just a forgetting of what to do with your breath. Mm-hmm. This is where yoga comes in, Eastern yoga, not Western yoga. Granted, it's great for different physiological reasons and, neuromuscular reasons, but Eastern yoga in particular, with Kriya, with pranayama, it is a go-to when you can't even pray, when you can't even meditate. In the Cloud of Unknowing, which we're going to be teaching today, it took me 7 years to prepare to be ready to teach that. I don't know why, but I really took my time on that one. But that other day is today at 1 p.m., by the way, on my Patreon channel. We'll link it up and pin it for you in a moment. But in the Cloud of Unknowing, it talks a lot about getting out of your own way in contemplation, and in the contemplative prayer. It is the entire treatise on contemplative prayer and how to really contemplate God, how to really get to know God through not knowing, hence the phrase, the cloud of unknowing. And I found it to be a really simple approach in this way, that when the mind has only this gentle breath-based light, that alone is a prayer. That when if you're just focusing on breathing in light in through the top of your crown chakra, all the way down through your feet and into Mother Earth, if you're focused on breath, even for a short amount of time, that even in that spiritual aridity is what the Cloud of Unknowing calls it, spiritual dryness. They describe this spot that we all struggle with, to be frank, daily, not weekly. Like adepts here are talking about struggling with not wanting to pray, not wanting to meditate, not wanting to do a Kriya. And the mind goes, that's not going to work. There's too much crap going on. So wait until you settle down. Wait until you feel better before you do that. Even Christian mystics around the world in modern times will say to themselves, I'll wait until I feel better so I don't bring my pain to God. So in this, the Cloud of Unknowing taught that you could, in that moment, focus on your breath and breathe, and also to pick a word or phrase that's really simple, that's on your mind at that moment, like God or love. Or if you feel that you can't, you can even focus on, if you feel unworthy, you can even say the word sin over and over again until it dissipates. That was the old Christian mystic way in the 14th century Carthusian monk language. And this anonymous author, who was a 14th century Carthusian monk writing for a spiritual aspirant who was 24 years old, she was a nun. And I just always assumed that when that she was like that she became a really powerful nun under his tutelage. It's just a beautiful story for me to wish upon, right? But he said to her in that moment of spiritual aridity or dryness, when you don't want to pray, you don't want to contemplate, you don't want to do those things, just say a word contemplatively over and over again until your mind completely opens. On top of that, I also strongly suggest breath. So we've talked about the one technique over and over and over again. For that reason, the way that I breathe in this Kriya is an adaptation of some old Kriyas combined with just an energy work and a counting. And we don't count 1, 2, 3. We count with a word. And we use that word one, not number, O-N-E. And we say that. And that was something that God downloaded to me before I had read, The Cloud of Unknowing It All. And I was still in this process of just picking up, going, I can't get past the religious language. It used to make me, that sort of Christian religious language used to make my stomach turn, because at that time I was a Maharishi Mahesh, follower. And I still am. And I was primarily a Ramana Maharshi, student and all sorts of things, but not, it was Eastern yoga. It was not Christian mysticism. So it was all about this beautiful language, and the Vedas are full of just poetic love for source. And it's also very scientific. And when you learn how the pundits pray, particularly if you're watching any of the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi pundits pray, they chant over and over again. And it's very monotone, but it's powerful and vibrational and beautiful. And parts of it reminds me of how Tibetan monks, express themselves to God. And that's the same thing that we're doing in the one technique. We're saying one as we're breathing in from the base of the spine to the top of the head. We're saying one as the breath goes up, one as we're inhaling one. And then we hold it for just a few seconds, right? And we imagine like a resistance, so our pressure around the scalp, which is an adaptation of Joe Dispenza's and Jose Silva's work. And then, we call in light to flood down, and we do a gentle, long, slow, low yoga breath back down the spine while white light floods, the chakra systems. And all the nadis, and it just comes out like a.
I remember teaching that, and I remember saying you should do it at least 3 times every morning.
Yeah,
facing the sun if you can, and do the oneness. That was a long time ago, but that stuck with me, as well as the one that you did that you sang, and that has helped me hugely. I don't know if I'm sure I saved it somewhere, where you sang. Very simply, breathe it in, breathe it out, let it go. Do you remember that one?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm telling you what, you put that in the car, and if you're driving to work and you have a, like a stressful drive or whatever, and you just keep singing along with it, breathe it in, breathe it out, let it go. It's transformative. You think, okay, you come to work on it. I feel good. Give me what you got. I
was very inspired by another yogi for that one. That one was, who is it? Alexa Chellin. See, I was almost about getting ready to go Google it. Not so much of a well-known yogi unless you're like really following some of the stuff, but she is incredible. She has an incredible vibration. Alexia Chellin is her name. And she has a mantra that is like that. And that was where I got that inspiration. And we were always singing. Remember when we were singing it together? Breathe it in, let it out. Breathe it in, let it go. Yeah. And now we sing that all the time. I sang that in traffic. Exactly. I sing that in my head when people are pissing me off, when my teenagers are, being teenagers. When people are attempting to shame me, anything that really, really triggers me. And shaming me is one thing that will get me. If you shame, like I really like, that's my weak point. And I go on YouTube and talk about your weak point, Mystic. Great. So bring it on. And when I realized that weak point, you know, I had this small amount of clients who I couldn't help who were coming to me, and they were just throwing their pain at me and mental illness and things like that and saying, you're not helping me. And I got to the point where I shamelessly said, do not shame me. I'm going to breathe that in. I'm going to let it out, and I'm going to let you go. You will not shame me. That will not happen, because I am humble enough to admit that you are beyond what I can, this disorder is beyond what I can deal with. And I've had to let some people go during 2020 and 2001. That's been hard.
And that's compassionate. That's compassionate.
That is compassionate. So compassion isn't always what we think it is. I wanted to share this story with you. I don't know if you were in class when I shared this ancient compassion and this ancient Buddhist tenet on compassion, but this story has really stuck with me. I got it, you know, from my teacher, you know, who got it from one of the Buddhist texts. And it's one of these old stories about compassion. And it really made me think about how deeply we get involved with other people's karma, and when we should and when we shouldn't. So in this story, this enlightened Buddhist Lama, you know, they travel, you know, all throughout Tibet and all throughout the world to meet people. And on the travels, a Bodhisattva apprentice came to him and said, I want to be enlightened. Can I follow you on your journeys? And the Lama said, I have two things that I have to tell you about that. You can come, but I have these rules. The first one is, do not question my teachings. Do not question what you don't understand. The second one is, be quiet. Don't speak so much. Which we would think would be like not compassionate, but we're always talking about and judging and shaming that which we do not understand. It's a daily thing that even ancient Bodhisattva apprentices did. And we're not different from that, from the Bodhisattva apprentice. We have to learn by training our minds in silence and non-judgment. So he started with that particular tenet of Buddhism. And the Bodhisattva apprentice said, okay, I can do that. And they went along their journeys, and they saw, they came upon a flood, and they were on shore. They were at the shore, and they were in a position to help a man who was in a boat. But the boat was tossing and turning, and he was screaming. He was going, I know you can help me. And the Buddha said no, and let him drown. And the Bodhisattva apprentice said, what are you doing? Go help him. Why are you? And the enlightened Buddha said, no. So the Lama and the Bodhisattva apprentice traveled further, and they came to a town where they were greeted very lavishly with a feast, as most Lamas and Bodhisattva apprentices are. Everyone wants to be touched by enlightened ones. Well, at least in the East they do. In the West, most people have forgotten that sacred journey, and the guru's different here. So they were greeted by these lavish feasts. And in the first feast, a homeless man, a beggar, came to the Bodhisattva and to the enlightened Lama and said, I'm starving, I'm frail, I'm infirm, please feed me. I know you have enough. And the Bodhisattva looked at the Buddha and he said, no, get out of here. And the next day came, and the same thing happened. And the third day came, at the third day of the feast, and the same thing happened. The Lama pushed the hungry man away. And the Bodhisattva, he had just had it by then. He said, that is not compassion. You are a Lama. You are here to serve. Why aren't you serving these people? Why aren't you helping them when you are in position to do so? And the Buddha said, I gave you two rules. One was don't question my teachings. One was be quiet. And here's why. With the first man, he was on his way to murder an entire village of women and children and other bodhisattva apprentices and those on their path. He was on his way. And if we had saved him and interrupted his karma, that would not have been compassionate for the people that he was about to murder. And in the second example, I asked for your silence because you don't understand or see the depth of the karma that the beggar, the homeless man, portrayed and was exhibiting to you. You could not see past his pain. In this lifetime and in multiple others, this beggar had taken from his entire family and left them to starve, left them in war zones, left them without food, stole all their riches and squandered it. And now he's a beggar and he's experiencing what they experienced. And that was his chosen karma. And if you take it from him, he will do it again. Lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, he will do it again. And many more people will die and go hungry and get sick. But you didn't understand or see that karma. I was compassionate. Now, this can be applied to a modern day interpretation about boundaries.
Yes.
When you say you're not being compassionate by giving and giving and giving until you're exhausted and flat on the floor, is that really compassionate? Saving people from their trouble. I am very scrupulous and discerning with my prayers. You've noticed in my 30-day prayer challenge, for those of you who don't know, we are in a 30-day prayer challenge right now to teach people what prayer really means, to bring its original ancient meaning back. Take it away from religion and put it where it should. It's just a lifeline to cosmic consciousness. In these challenges, what I've been careful to do is to pay deep attention to the collective and to pray things that actually show you what you're feeling. But some of you are coming back to me going, that's too sad. I want you to be happy. I want you to smile. That's not compassionate because you're showing me your pain. And I said, oh, really? I'm showing you our pain. Right?
Yes. Yes.
What's your idea, Karen, about the karmic side of compassion in this regard?
Well, I've had it recently because what was the famous, if you think you're enlightened, go home and spend a week with your family. And I have two siblings that have a real issue with not letting things go, not finding forgiveness and that kind of thing. And I could sit there and I could give them a lecture about forgiveness and why it's important and letting things go and why it's important and what they're doing to their health and all this. Or I could say, I'm just going to give you one little sentence here and I'm going to go away now because you can either learn something from that or you're not ready to learn yet. And you're going to sit in there in your grief and your misery for a while longer. And it's sometimes, like you say, not getting involved in their karma. This is for them to learn and for them to figure out how they're going to learn it. Because it's going to mean a lot more. You can go around and fix people all day long, but that doesn't really help them in the way that unless they do it themselves, unless, like you're always saying, you're a teacher that brings the student back to themselves. I'm the same way, but I try to teach the people that come to me the same thing. Find your power and do this, but don't give them all the answers. Don't take, that isn't compassion. Compassion, letting them figure it out and letting the guy back to the tiller, guiding them back, but not. Sometimes you just have to stand back and do like our favorite Pema Chandran and the Tonglen prayer of just breathing in the pain of the collective and breathing out hope and love. And I even brought it with, that you told me, everybody, the compassion book. You could just every day go and you can learn about compassion. Just pick a day. It's not rocket science. It's not, you could just one little thing a day.
And actually speaking, it's not rocket science for sure. And I love that book. I love Pema Aaralyn on so many levels. Her teachings are absolutely splendid. But people can put it up here and go, oh, wow, that makes so much sense. Great. Train your mind, train the intellect, do your studies. Absolutely. And take it deeper. take it into practice. When I read that one, I made a lot of, I love to do this. It's crazy because I feel like I'm a little bit like a kindergartner in this way, in the way that I learn intellectually. So I like mnemonic devices, flashcards, highlighted things that I can carry around and pull out of my mommy purse when I'm super busy in the middle of something that just typically gaslights me, or because that, like, taking those principles and having them at your fingertips to train your mind. Even if you have to, you're out in public and you have to go off to the restroom somewhere and pull it out of your purse, or, pull it off your phone somewhere in the notes section. It's okay. It's okay that these principles have been forgotten and that we have to relearn them and unlearn some of the things that modern spirituality has taught us to keep us away from, these ancient tenets of compassion.
Yeah.
It takes some
in my glasses case. I have things in my pockets. I have invocations everywhere. I have them stuck up on the wall, to.
Right. And then we practice it. Yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Practice it practically. You practice it in action in a real life situation between you and another human being. Is the best way. So.
And it's also something that I found that people that feel that they're compassionate, they're sympathetic, and it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. And, that we could go into definitions if we wanted, but sympathy is, I'm so sorry for your loss. And then you never hear from them again. Whereas the compassionate person will check on that person and make sure that they're okay. And then when they're okay, that's great. Or they just sit there and go, do you want to just cry on my shoulder today? I'm here for you. I'm here for you. Compassion is more, to me, it can be a very active thing. It can be a, people are always surprised that I'll check on them like a month later. It'll hit me in the head and I'll go, I haven't checked on this person for a while. And I know that their husband is very, very ill, is going through something. Let me just, and you can't imagine how that makes people feel, that they have been thought of, that their story is out there. Somebody cares about what they're going through. Somebody cares about, listening to them. And listening is one of the most compassionate, to me, one of the most compassionate things you can do is stop jumping over them going, oh yes, sympathy is, oh yes, this happened to me. And oh yes, I can relate because I did this and I did that. No, let them tell it. Just be there and just be there. And that is something that takes patience, practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does take, I would say that takes the grace of fortitude. I pray almost every day for the grace of fortitude, to train my mind to not be silently judging another human being, particularly if they're doing it to me, to not be listening to only their judgments, to not be seeing only the things that would cause resistance or fear in me. Because that's what we're doing innately. As the human mind is trained. Every single one of us has a mind that is trained for fear. Your brain physiologically and psychologically works in that way. Physiologically, it's synapses based upon what keeps it safe. And your brain trains itself to keep you safe from something that happened that scared you in the past, or that hurt you in the past. And the brain wants you to stay away from that. So it causes fear and resistance immediately. And how do we transpose that into energy? By judgment thoughts, attack thoughts, vengeance thoughts, envy thoughts. All of these things are discussed in both modern and ancient mysticism. Mystics for the past 5, 6, 7, 8,000 years have understood that the ego is not that we want to kill the ego, we need it to survive. However, death in this meaning, the death of the ego, is a metaphor. Because we have to, like the cloud of unknowing says, we have to go into a cloud of forgetting of all of that. We have to forget all of that and put that cloud of forgetting between ourselves and all of our painful thoughts that are running like a script in the background, And I really love that image that the cloud of forgetting gave us, where we have ourselves and then the cloud of forgetting beneath our feet. And then all this judgment and attack and war and pain and everything that the world is throwing at you and everything that you might throw back at the world in response. Mm-hmm. That's down there. And you have a cloud of forgetting. You have to forget, not to say that the world isn't in trouble. It's not to say that there aren't some grand truths about deceptions in governments right now. Not to say any of that. But if you keep giving that your constant energy, you reside so far, as Teresa of Avila said, kind of in the dungeon of your soul, or not even there. You're not even in the castle. Sometimes you're in the moat around it, there with the reptiles of painful thoughts is what she called it.
Yeah.
Right. So this cloud of forgetting in a new age, modern spiritual culture, people will say to you, you're not active enough. You're not advocating enough. People will try to shame you for this. But there's no way that you can go up into like the seventh kingdom of God. Imagine your soul like an elevator building going up to the top and see everything like that in love. You got to be up there in order to do that. It's hard to do that while you're in the face of it. So don't hesitate to train your mind, heal the soul, train the nervous system with Eastern yoga and Kriya and breath and prayer. Train your mind and body for this. Go up to that seventh kingdom and be in that contemplative cloud of unknowing where you're not thinking all those things just for a little while every day. It doesn't mean you're not compassionate. It doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean the world isn't, having some deep, deep, deep struggles. But the world is also in a fascinating space of transformation, unlike anything I've personally ever seen in any of my lifetimes.
And you remember all
Oh, not all of them. I remember something almost every day. I just know there are a lot. And that's the case for most of us. We're all old souls. But yeah, and then you can take that light back down and then you can advocate. But what I'm finding is people are trying to advocate and trying to serve and trying to be in that compassion without training the mind, training the body, healing the soul. There's so much to this. There's so much.
And don't even start on forgiveness. Forgive it. You've messed up. Forgive it and forgive them for what they said to you and forgive it. You don't have to get back in the same room with them or back in the car with them, but you got to forgive it. And that's something that is drummed into me by everyone who's speaking through me when I try to work with people and I try to help people is you've got to forgive it. And you really got to do it before in this lifetime. Don't wait to do it in another lifetime. Do it now. Yeah. Yeah. And it's a lot easier to be compassionate if you can forgive.
The only thing that anger and jealousy and bitterness and resentment and criticism and all of that, the shame that you're either holding towards another or yourself, like typically it's we think it's towards others, but there's a foundation within that comes from us. So I find that when I can't forgive somebody, I like to write a letter of forgiveness. I'm very literal that way. I write letters to God, and I'm a writer, so I pull out these little pads and I there was one that I had to write one time, a letter of forgiveness. And when you're in these stages of legal battles and things like that, there's no justice, particularly when it comes to like divorces and custody and things like that. And a parent can get away with a lot. And in my situation, the parent was losing his mind. He was going through some deep psychological stuff, my kid's dad. And he wouldn't just give me a fair divorce. Not only would he not sign it, he fought it all the way. And then he would steal the kids and move them around multiple states, like to around 3 to 4 different states in the country. And luckily, like I can goose chase you. I have all the patience in the world for that. But it's hard to be without your kids as a mom, and for very unfair reasons that I felt that was happening. So I'm praying and praying and praying, and I just couldn't forgive him for that. And God said, why don't you lift this up to the seventh kingdom? Why don't you lift it up to the higher realms where no harm has done? So I wrote that down. And I said, okay, God, I lift him up and I lift myself up to the higher realms where no harm has been done and has ever been done, where only you know and comprehend the compassion and the love that we are expressing with each other. I lift him up and I lift myself up. I lift the kids up, and that was the month where suddenly, cops began to help me, and, school systems began to help me. Social workers began to meet me at their schools and say, I got you. And I was like, you sure? Because typically you don't. Typically, that's a legal thing, right? Like cops would say things and say, well, I can't help you, but I can. And they're winking. And, and I'm, what are you saying? And like, I'm being like deeply led, and I had no idea, but I did. And everyone around me, like my attorney, my partner at the time, they were like, don't do that. Don't do that. And the cops were going, and the social workers were winking. And I'm like, what is going on? And, and that was after I had begun to write letters of forgiveness to lift the entire situation and every person in it into the higher realms where no harm has been done. And then I asked for forgiveness of myself for whatever way that I had harmed him that I did not understand. And I asked for that to be made understood. And I did finally understand it.
That's incredibly powerful. That practice in itself is incredibly powerful.
And it brought forth that prayer of forgiveness brought forth a lot of compassion towards him. And it was interesting because prior to then, like the communication coming from him was painful and kind of psychologically imbalanced, and didn't really understand what he was saying. And there was a lot of crazy things. And then it stopped, and it was like, you know what? I know that I need some help, and I'm getting it. And I'm sorry. I want to be your friend. And of course, I have my motives. I want to see the kids, but I realize that I don't have custody anymore. And I realize that I can only do that supervised, and I'm willing to do it. And that was a piece that he started to share with me, that didn't happen until then. And unfortunately, shortly thereafter, he passed this world, and it was just a horrendous loss for everyone because he was just starting to heal. Yeah. And just
as were you.
Yeah. And as was I, and we were all starting to heal, and then he left this world. But imagine if we didn't do that.
That's right.
Before he left this world, so that was my compassion story. I've got to go to work now. Can you leave us with some places that we can find you?
My group, the Awakened Lightworkers Spiritual Development Circle, is the best place. It is a group that you just have to answer a couple questions, basically saying that we'd like you to be active. We don't want it just about memes or just to be quiet and not do anything. And we can't help you evolve unless you can tell us something about yourself, what you want to learn. If we don't know it, we can find out. I can always come and ask you. And that's the best place to find me. I'm mostly active on Messenger because that's where I do most of my one-on-one work. But those are the best places. I have an email address, but usually, it's not necessary. If you want to reach out to me, those are the best places. And then sometimes we do Zoom calls and we can work in groups and things like that. A lot of my we do that probably once a month or so and get together like that. So that's really the best, easiest way. If you're not on Facebook, I'm really sorry because I'm not really on anything else, because for right now, it's enough for me with my studies with you and the people that I work with right now. That's kind of enough on my plate. So.
And Karen teaches the mysteries and does a lot of channeling. There's a lot of things I'm sure that I'm missing in that as we wrap up that you can feel free to add in.
Oh, yeah. And I'm doing where we talked about the Alice Bailey work I started on. I told Anya I'm cheating and I'm going to the advanced one straight away. And some of the Alice already very effective, very effective. And for those of you who are already in my group, Pamela has agreed to do another class for us. Yay. So excited. But thank you. And I know all of you will thank her in your own way too.
Yeah. Super exciting. There's a lot of other teachers there. One of them's here today. Iona's here today. And there's a lot of teachers that teach there as well. Karen does some classes there and some lives there and Q&As there. And you'll see us randomly coming on to teach or to share or to help train people into their own awakening and helping people along the way. You'll see many, many light workers other than myself there that you might align with. This is a really good opportunity to meet some colleagues in your field and to kind of meet some people that are just, I honestly, it's very similar to my group, but I haven't really found a Facebook group that is so full of light all the time. Like all the time you're focused on the light, like you don't stray from it. And much like my group, Karen's group is very well maintained, and there is a lot of what's the word, moderation. It's well moderated.
It doesn't need that much. There are a lot of healers in that group, and they want to help and they want to heal. And if somebody says, I need some help, you watch all the posts going, sending. They are an amazing group of people. I'm very blessed to have met all of them. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much
for tonight in the cloud of unknowing. I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, I took my time on that one. And I thought when I was going to teach the cloud of unknowing, I thought, I'm not going to read it all the way. I'm going to save a surprise for myself. I'll understand the basic tenets and I'll get them downloaded into myself. And the other thing that I'm not going to do in teaching this work, I'm going to not teach it from a modernized interpretation. I'm going to teach it from the 14th century language with the thee and the thy and the thou, because I find that a lot of people think, oh, well, what could a 14th century Carthusian monk know about separation of church and state? Well, quite frankly, a lot. What could they were going through the same things. What could a 14th century Carthusian monk know about modern times of taking women's rights away? Quite frankly, a lot. And what could a 14th century Carthusian monk know about illness, major illnesses in society that we're facing, like COVID? Well, quite frankly, a lot. They had the Black Death. What could they know about political turmoil? Oh my goodness, enlightenment could be bought back then. You could buy away your sins in the church. What could they know about a repressed government? Quite frankly, a lot. They know what we were going through, and they were going through the same things. And we think that this is new, and it isn't. No. That's what I learned from channeling It's Anonymous After. I just learned directly from, as a clear conduit channel, I just listened. And the words, when I did read a couple different versions of it, and when I was reading the modern interpretation of it, there was something lacking. There was something missing. Mm-hmm. So we're not teaching it from that version. We're going to use the 14th century language.
I love the old stuff.
There's
nothing under the sun, right? So
yeah. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this wonderful teacher, Karen Mary, and I hope that you find her on her group right now. You will not regret that. It's a wonderful group, and she's a wonderful teacher. It's very rare that I can bring someone on here and vouch for them as a teacher or facilitator. So I'm very honored to be able to do so when those rare opportunities come. So thank you, Karen. And thank you, everyone. I'll see you today at 1 p.m. on my Patreon channel for the Cloud of Unknowing. It's such a powerhouse of love. It really is. And I really hope you can make it to it. I'll see you guys soon.
Thank you.
Bye, Karen.